All right, I want to welcome on my next guest. We've got a very special guest. We got longtime Washington football and Buffalo Bills defensive standout, two-time Pro Bowler, and longtime Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee, Mr. Lorenzo Alexander. Lorenzo, how's everything going for you?
I'm doing great this morning, Zach. How about you?
Doing well, doing well. So how's everything been going for you? We're almost a year into the pandemic. It looks like we're hitting the finish line. How's everything been going for
Yeah.
you and your family?
I mean, overall, our family's been pretty well. I've been very fortunate and blessed to have resources and access
Yeah,
to, a lot of things. And, the hardest part is just to watch, people suffering, around you. We've had a couple of family members get sick. Had some passing in our families as well. And so, we've had to grieve and work through those
yeah,
instances. But I would say overall, when you take the, the, the big scope of things,
yeah.
we're doing pretty well. And so, it's been a blessing as well in a lot of ways, transitioning out of football, and has really allowed me to kind of re-engage my family in so many ways, um, and get to know them. The world really stood still for several months there, and coming right out of football, it allowed me to slow down and spend time with them and hang out and kind of re-energize versus just jumping straight into something else, which I probably would have done because as of right now, my hands are full and juggling family and a couple of other ventures that I've kind of gotten into.
And I have a question. Are you officially retired? Because I saw you told Pat McAfee if Buffalo is still interested in you. You could maybe jump back in.
No, I'm officially retired. It would have to be some special circumstances for me to come back out. And at this point, having removed myself from the game and having relaxed mentally,
Yeah,
what those cats do out there, on Sundays and even in practice, what people don't really get to see is crazy. So I'm done being crazy, and I've moved on, and I'm on some other things, some bigger things that God has planned for me.
so if Buffalo's outside linebacker can't play in the Super Bowl next year, and they give you a call, you're busy. You can't. Or is the
Well,
door
one
open?
one game I may be able to muster it up, but I
All
I,
right.
I really doubt it, and I doubt they're going to call me. I'm low on in their Rolodex, hitting somewhere.
How cool was it to see all their success this season?
It was great. It wasn't unexpected for me. I mean, it was something
Yeah,
that I knew that they were capable of doing, and I predicted that they were going to be in the AFC Championship game, and whether or not they was able to take that next step was yet to be unseen. Obviously, they didn't make it, and I know they're going to grow and get better from it, much like they did after our 2019 loss to Houston. That's what a lot of the success is based around. Everybody is athletic and can play, and coaches can scheme up, but it's dealing with those moments, especially if you've never experienced it as a unit, as a team. How do you overcome? How do you grow so that you can get back? And we've seen that countless times with other organizations where they get there, lose. Next year they grow a little bit, then maybe lose early, and then finally that third, fourth year, they're able to culminate all their experiences. Getting better, maybe adding a few pieces here and there, and be able to get over that hump. And I have the utmost confidence in Sean and Brandon and those men in that locker room that they'll be able to accomplish that.
are there any positions of need you think they should address either in free agency or the draft? Do you think they can just get even better?
I mean, you can always add pass rushers, right? I think that's somewhere where they probably need to be more consistent, be able to generate that with the front four. I think Jerry Hughes does an excellent job and is really underappreciated in a lot of ways
Oh
because
yeah.
he doesn't have the actual sack, numbers. That column doesn't fill up. But as far as what he's able to do, I think he's great. And to be able to add a younger guy, a younger piece, which they started to do, right? They brought in AJ Epinesa,
Yeah,
had to deal with a COVID off season for a rookie, which is really
yeah,
hard. And we saw him kind of um, mature throughout the season. And so but I still think, having that guy that you can almost count on, a guy that Jerry can mentor and be that transition guy that they go to once Jerry decides to move on, is something of need. And I don't know. Everything else, I mean, they're really built in probably another corner, trying to figure that out. I don't
yeah,
know, whether it's Levi Wallace, whether it's another veteran guy somewhere that's out on the market,
yeah,
or finding somebody that's opposite of Tre'Davious White that they can keep in there and stay in there
yeah.
because, it's kind of been a new trend of this rotation. Um, type thing where they've used, multiple guards or multiple corners,
Yeah.
which those spots to me are like sacred, where it's not like a running back or wide
Yeah.
receivers or pass rushers coming in
Yeah.
and out. Those are guys that you want out there down in and down out, kind of locking it down, because continuity, I think, more so is more important than trying to figure out who's playing best at that
Yeah.
particular time.
And then at running back, do you think Moss and Singletary can get it done? Or would you bring in another guy?
No, I think those guys have what it takes. Obviously, again, Zach being a young guy, being a rookie, having another year, another offseason to grow and mature and
Yeah.
understand what it means to be a professional. He's done a great job as far as in the community and doing things of that nature. But just being healthy and being able to sustain the workload of what it's going to carry, what it means for him. And I think he's going to produce. And I like their complementary skill sets that they both bring. When I think about Singletary and what he's done, and shifty out of the backfield, he can also run in between the tackles. I think those guys are good. But just in the world we live in,
Yeah.
everybody's always looking for, where's our Alvin Kamara at, or our Christian McCaffrey? When I mean, they're great to have those pieces, but those
Yeah.
guys didn't win the Super Bowl either, right? So
No.
I think continuity, having those guys as far as character and what they mean to the organization, I think those are guys that you want to roll with. And then if you stumble upon somebody that's able to add, you add them. But I'm not. That's not my highest priority. That's not what I'm going to go out and look for, because I think both of those guys are dynamic in their own right, and collectively together, they can be special.
Were there any of the guys like in the rookie class from last year that maybe you hadn't heard of that you were like, I can't believe, like the front office, like these guys are doing their job. Like this guy's unbelievable.
Gabriel Davis.
He's unreal. From
He
UCF,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah, I had opportunity to kind of watch training camp from afar last year, and just kind of, helping out the linebackers. And he was one of the guys that consistently popped to me. It's like, man, this dude is nice. Who was them? I had to call a couple of guys who was 13 out there, man.
Yeah.
He catching everything, making plays. And so, obviously to be able to find him where they did and get a
Yeah.
lot of value out of his production, he's going to be a guy that continues to ascend. And
Yeah.
again, having a off season with the team, and even though it still may not be a traditional off season,
Yeah.
having that familiarity and already having a foundation where he can grow from, he's going to be a guy that can really step in.
Yeah.
Especially when you think about the exiting of John Brown.
Yeah.
If Gabe can take that next step,
Yeah.
and then obviously Cole Beasley and then Diggs, what he's able to do, and get Dawson Knox back in the mix, that is still a very formidable
Yeah.
group as far as what they're able to do. And so yeah, so I'm excited for them. Excited to see what they do.
Do you listen to Cole Beasley's rap on Spotify?
Yeah, yeah. I gotta check out my boy from time to time, man. I do a little podcast. I need to
Oh,
actually
cool.
get him to do me an intro or something, man. The
Yeah, that'd
dude
be.
has bars.
When you first met him, did you think this guy might be a great rapper?
Well, I heard Cole. I mean, he been in the music game for a while.
Oh, really?
So even before, yeah, it's not like he started rapping when he got to
Oh,
Buffalo. He was on, oh man, the Breakfast Club. I want to say
really?
something
With
like that.
Charlemagne?
Like with Sway in the morning,
Yeah.
some of that. And he was on there like years ago. And I was like, man, this dude got some flow to him. And so I call him Water. That's his like self-given nickname. We call him Water, but yeah, Cole is a great dude, man. Really love being around him. Love his personality, his energy, and his family. So yeah, the dude has it, and he surprised you, right? You don't think this little white short receiver is gonna be able to have the
Oh,
swag
no.
and the bars that he can produce. So it's cool when you meet guys and people like that surprise you and give you the unexpected.
Absolutely. And then did you have any kind of big takeaways from the season outside of COVID? Just kind of maybe teams that surprised you or guys that you thought played exceptionally well from just this league as a whole?
Yeah, the league as a whole. I mean, I was watching a ton of football all over the place. I mean, obviously, like a guy like Claypool
Yeah.
in Pittsburgh, saw a lot of them. Really popped. Got a lot of love going around. That's probably the biggest. The thing that was shocking to me that just really stood out was just like all of the injuries that guys were sustaining, especially early on in the season,
Yeah.
to significant players, guys that were game changers. And so that was hard to watch and see. But yeah, I got a chance to see Claypool play a lot just from watching them, and then the Washington football team as well. Just watching Chase Young. I
He's
did some post
unbelievable.
game stuff for them, so I watched a lot of that tape, and that dude is just a monster. Just seeing how he flies around. Everybody talks about how he rushes the passer and can get after the QB, but the dude just plays hard, and he has like this mentality. I mean, he's always engaged in the game. I mean, it's time for him to sit down and kind of rest and recharge, and he's out there barking at the opposing team's defense, and it's just fun to watch a guy in the generation that he's associated with be almost a throwback player in the sense of the way he approaches the game from a mentality standpoint. So that was really refreshing to watch.
You can tell that wild card game he was playing a little banged up against Tampa.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's everybody's banged up. I mean, if you get to the postseason and you ain't dealing with something, you either ain't playing or you ain't playing hard. I mean, it's either one of the two. It's rare that you can make it all the way that far and not be dealing with something that's nagging, whether it's an ankle, a bruise, something that's bothering you. And the injury rate is 90% or 100%, I should say. So yeah, everybody's out there, but I mean, he's a beast, and again, he may not have had the stats
No.
in that game, but he impacted it because Tampa was obviously worried about it. I mean, they're chipping him, doubling him. You have to do those things, and when the team is doing that, that's the utmost respect.
What do you think about the signing of Ryan Fitzpatrick last night?
It was shocking. I wasn't expecting that to happen. But obviously that team right now is a little bit it's been in transition for a long time. But how they was able to finish the season last year. Obviously, I hated to see Alex Smith get released after everything that he did to get back. But obviously maybe his body wasn't where it needed to be. In their opinion. But Fitz, great dude. I've had a chance to meet him, get to know him a little bit, especially from afar through like E Wood and Kyle Williams talking about him, just knowing the type of dude he is, and had a couple of conversations. And so I know that he's going to be a stabilizing presence there. He's going to have an opportunity to obviously compete for that division, and if he can continue to play the way he does. It's definitely going to push Taylor Heineke and then whoever else is on that roster that's going to compete for that job. But he has the ability, if he plays the way he was last year in Miami, to help that team win the NFC East again. Especially when you think about the other people in that division. Obviously, Dallas getting Dak back is going to be a significant game changer, and see how their defense plays. But those two teams, especially when you add in Fitzpatrick, is definitely going to be, I think, the top tier teams in that division once again.
Ocho Cinco said with Fitzpatrick in the lineup, McLaurin's going to have 1,500 yards.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna sling that ball around, and McLaren is a baller. Terry's another guy that I got to watch again. Very unassuming. I think he won the third round 2 years ago, and I was just talking to my boy Antoine Randall about him. We played in Washington. He was out here visiting, and he was like, man, I had that dude top of my board, a couple of years ago. First rounder type, and I don't know why he failed. I don't know if it was because of his height or whatnot, but Antoine really loved, his number one thing when you look at a receiver is his route running ability. Is he able to run the entire route tree? And I'm just trying to pick, like, what does that even mean? People always say that he's a great route runner, but his ability to make everything look the same, but do different things at a high end speed and come out of his breaks and ready to catch the football and make those plays. He could see that, and obviously Antoine Randall played years in the league and knows what a receiver looks like, and so it was cool to kind of hear what that meant and how Terry in particular does it better than anybody else.
Didn't Randall Ells recently? He's with the Lions now. He's a new receiver coach.
Yeah. So he was an assistant receivers coach down in Tampa Bay, and then obviously with all the success that they've had, the Lions picked him up as the receivers coach now. Awesome. So he's going to be doing some real cool things over there, and I expect nothing but the best, especially working with like Anthony Lynn I had that connection, and so he'll fit right in with that group, knowing who Alien is and the people that he's going to have on his staff.
Yeah, no, because Dan Campbell is going to be must-see TV every week. He's
Yeah.
did you ever I didn't realize, I never knew he played. Did you ever match up against him?
I don't believe so. I mean, if I caught him, it was at the tail end of his career and the beginning of mine, and so I don't remember playing Atlanta. I was with the I was with the Panthers back then, but I mean, I was on practice squad, so I wouldn't even have played him.
Interesting. So I want to kind of get into your career a little bit. How'd you end up at Cal?
Well, I'm from the Bay Area. You know, I grew up in Oakland, California, and that was always one of the schools that my family at least wanted me to go to. My grandfather was a huge Cal fan and wanted me to go there. He passed away when I was young, and so that was something that my mom kept alive in his memory. But at the end of the day, I mean, I could have went anywhere. I was a top, a 5-star, probably like a top 5 recruit in the country, and had my opportunity to go to various places. But at the end of the day, I wanted to find a great blend of academics and athletics. And Stanford at the time was actually, I would say, more the marquee school to attend because they were contending for national championships, and obviously Stanford is world renowned academically.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't get in. That was one of the few schools that you actually have to apply to get in as an athlete, and I didn't make it through that process. You know, I had like a 3.4 my sophomore year. My SAT scores was only a 1050, and that wasn't good enough for Stanford. But that was their loss, and I ended up going to Cal, which was secondary to me. Now, football wise, they weren't as good, but the cool thing about it was that I was part of, much like in Buffalo, part of that culture change of, I think my first year there, we were 1-11, like 114 out of 115 D1 schools. And by the time I left, we were top 5 in the country. And then obviously I had a great academic opportunity too. But we had the Aaron Rodgers, you know, Marshawn Lynch's, Brandon Meebanes. I mean, just a ton of guys and talent on that team. And to be a part of that process, that's kind of really how my career has been in a lot of ways, to help organizations change, and then I kind of move on.
What was a young Marshawn Lynch like?
You know, obviously I got to play with Marshawn at Cal, and that was at like around the same time AP Adrian Peterson was coming out. And obviously I'm a biased dude. I mean, he's from my hometown. I get to play with him. I get to see him every single day. So I always thought money was a better back and all around back. AP is probably the better pure runner, just like running back. But what Marshawn, and towards the end of his career, he was a bigger guy. But playing at 240. But when Marshawn was 205, 215, you could, throw a ton of screens to him. You could motion him out. He could run the route tree, would do some things outside, especially in college, because Jeff Tefford was a pro-style offensive mind, and would utilize him in different ways and take advantage of those matchups and his skill set. And so I always thought Marshawn was the overall just better back, even though both of them are great. I just always gave a nod to Marshawn, and people look at me crazy. I'm like, he is. Believe me.
Yeah, he's got more rings. So maybe that's it. But were you there when he had the golf cart, or was that after you left?
No. That was like his. That might have been like his junior year, his last year there. But we all know about it.
Did you see Aaron Rodgers' success early on, or were you surprised by it?
And nobody can predict a guy is going to be that good for this long. I always knew he was going to be good in the league and should have went number 1 overall that year. Instead of Alex Smith, but I mean, things happen for a reason, and that really put a chip on his shoulder, unlike any other, going 22 to Green Bay and then having to endure what he had to do there as far as sitting on the bench for 5 years. And that's, a humbling experience, especially when you have the ability to play at a high level. So I think all those things created who Aaron is today as far as the dynamic passer, and seems to always getting better and loves the challenge when people count him out to step up. But I always thought he was going to be great. I just didn't know he'll be this dominant and this great and be, one of the top quarterbacks to ever play the game. Yeah. I mean, that's a hard prediction to make, when you look at a guy when he's, 21, 22, transferred from Butte, and we hanging out and doing what we doing, to say that he's going to be the greatest or one of the greatest of all time.
When he first transferred from JUCO, were you like, how the hell did this guy not get any offers?
No, no. I mean, it happens all the time, and I don't know if he was that dynamic because he didn't even win the quarterback competition initially. It was Reggie Robertson, I believe it was, and then Reggie ended up getting hurt in one of our early games, and then Aaron got his opportunity, and then he took off. So,
Wow.
so I wasn't surprised because it happens all the time. There's a ton of guys like that, especially from the area I grew up in. That you're like, man, how does this dude? Why does this dude at JUCO? And so for it's one reason or another, especially where he was at that time. I think now in today's world, he doesn't get overlooked just because of the social media, the videos. I mean, but back then, man, I can't even find a video of myself even playing anything just because the digital world was so in its infancy stages that it was hard to find guys. But obviously got found at some point. And the crazy thing about it is that they weren't even recruiting him. They were recruiting another tight end from Butte, Garrett Cross, that ended up coming to Cal too. And they got Aaron because they saw what he was doing in Garrett Cross's film.
Wow, that's unbelievable. I never knew that. That's unbelievable. Do you think it's easier for guys to get discovered now because everything's digital and everything's recorded in social media and everything like that?
Yes, and no. I mean, I think it's I like balance, and so if there's so much information out there, so many things that's going on, and then obviously the ability to cut things up and edit it and make it look the way you want it to look. I think there's a ton of exposure, but there's also a lot of stuff you have to sift through as a recruiter, trying to figure out who is that guy and who's for real and who's like a pretend. Okay, they just cut up a whole bunch of highlights from different angles, and then their profile looks much better than who they actually are as a football player.
Yeah. So I have a question. Did you know you were going to go undrafted?
No, I thought I would be like a mid-round pick, third, fourth, maybe fifth, especially after talking from everybody. But a lot of people share my story, and especially once you get down to the later rounds, if you don't fit the mold, and I didn't, especially at that time, I think people didn't quite know what to do with me because of my height. That was more of a bigger is better generation, and they wanted guys that was 6'5", 6'6", 300 pounds. I was 6'2", 300 pounds. And so, yeah, people just missed on some of the intangibles that I possessed. I also had to grow up a lot in a lot of ways as far as the way I worked, maximizing my ability. And I think people saw maybe some of that I wasn't maximizing it, and then also kind of put me in a box, and the combination of the two put me in a position where I went undrafted. I was a high priority free agent where teams were calling me right after the draft, which a lot of guys don't have that opportunity. So even though I went undrafted, by that time it was probably a better fit for me to get to choose where I got to go versus being drafted and told where to go.
So I saw you were on 2 different practice squads before you got to DC. What was that kind of? Was it like a humbling experience for you? Kind of put a chip on your shoulder?
Yeah, it was definitely humbling. I mean, playing for the Carolina Panthers, I was on their practice squad. And I didn't really learn this until probably I got to Washington as far as growing and maturing. But my lifestyle and where I wanted to be just didn't add up. And so I had to go through that. I had to grind. I had to mature as far as who I was as a person. And that really happened once I got to Washington. I got around some guys, some brothers that were really intentional about helping me grow as a man, helped me introduce me to Christ. I had a Sean Taylor passing. So I had some real impactful moments when I was in Washington. But yeah, those years grinding on practice squad was probably some of the hardest years. Well, the hardest year was 2006 under Joe Gibbs, where, I mean, I literally took every single rep possible. And that was back in the day where you had 2 days at training camp. So training camp, I was in Carolina. And so I was down in Wofford in the 115-degree heat. That was trash. And then I come to Washington with an old school, the old school head coach, right? Joe Gibbs 2.0, and the way on practice squad, just the way my practice was with, I never wasn't on the field. I gave the look, defensive line look, offensive line look, special teams. And so those are some days, especially later in the year when we used to practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and have full pads on essentially, where there were days where I could barely get up the steps, to my apartment, to my room. And so it was that was definitely a crazy hard time.
What was the hardest position for you to learn to teach yourself to play?
Mm, Probably linebacker. I mean, just standing up. I mean, just going through the transition of standing up was probably the hardest thing, because you see so much, and sometimes you see too much and see nothing. And so I had to train my eyes on what I needed to be looking at, um, to so that I could go out there and play the position the best that I could based on my skill set. And so that was probably the hardest transition, just training your eyes and playing blocks from a different perspective because I had never really done that before.
Has anybody tried to get you as like to give any interest in coaching because you played almost every defensive position? Like you
Yeah,
know
yeah. I
everybody's.
mean, I've had a couple of teams reach out. I'm not going to get into that world, just because it's way too much time. I played 15 years, and I know a lot of guys like jumping right back into it.
Yeah.
But where my kids are at, and what I want to do, and what I'm really passionate about, I don't need to be in the building to still be around the organization. If I'm proud about anything about my career, it's about the relationships that I built. And so, I have ample of opportunity, whether it's, especially after we get through this pandemic,
Yeah.
about going to OTAs for, 3 days in maybe Buffalo, maybe go down to Tampa for 3 days, and then go to Pittsburgh for training camp. I mean, I just have a lot of relationships out there where I can contact people and be around the game and still impact guys from a time being or from afar. But to be in it, every day, that's just too much, especially when I think about, my Zoe's 12, Mason's 10, and Miles is 6. I've been coaching flag football and going in the backyard. When you coaching, you can't have that type of lifestyle. It's just too hard, too overwhelming, especially during the season. It's worse than player schedule. So I'm not built for that, at this time in my life. Now, when I'm an empty nester in another 10, 12 years, and still maintaining relationships, if something comes and and it looks good, maybe. But right now it'd be more like a consultant, kind of coming in, intern, kind of just learning for a week or so, and then getting out of there.
When they brought you to Washington, what would they tell you your role was going to be? They say, hey, you've practiced well with an opportunity to maybe play some special teams, or what were they telling you?
Yeah, no, it was just straight practice squad. I was just there for a body. I was seen as a body, and I wasn't even their first choice as far as being at practice squad. The other guy ended up pulling his hamstring, and so that gave me the opportunity for, in our workout, the guy that I was competing against. It was 3 of us. He pulled his hamstring in the workout, and I was like their secondary choice. So just getting in there, and then I remember after that 2006 season, I did pretty well on practice squad, as well as you can do. And I remember the defensive line coach saying, "Yeah, young blood, you're 6'2", because it's all about being big, tall, and long." I'm like, well, man, I can't do nothing with six. You telling me I'm 6'2"? I can't change that. So I don't think they had a vision for me. I had to create something for myself, along with the teammates around me. So I used to beg Danny Smith, hey, Danny, man, put me on teams. By the way I ran around and hustled, flying around to the ball, I had to separate myself in other ways to make them say, I don't know what we can do with this dude. I don't know if I really like his skill set or his measurables, but this dude's heart, man, we gotta put him somewhere, even if it's the last man, we gotta put him somewhere because the dude is grinding for it. And I'm fortunate enough that the coaching staff at that time appreciated that type of work ethic and that type of grind, and didn't just look at me purely as, okay, what are his measurables? Because I mean, if you just look at me like that, I'm not anything special. I think my character and how I play is what allows me, or what allowed me to play for 15 years.
That's unbelievable. Which of the Washington coaches do you think gave you the best chance in the defense, and maybe saw more in you than the others?
I mean, that's kind of unfair because I progressed and got better as a player. So I mean, I had my most opportunity with Jim Haslett and under Shanahan, but by that time, that was like year, 5, 6, 7 with those guys. And so I had been around guys like London Fletcher and Kedrick Golston and Rocky McIntosh and Andre Carter. So guys that, really helped me grow as a football player and a person. So Shanahan and Jim Haslett got the best version of myself while I was at Washington. Other than that, my role was just slightly different with those other two coaches, and Jim Zorn and Gibbs was more of a utility guy.
What was RG3's rookie season like for the you and the team?
It was great. I mean, we won 7 games at the end of the season, I believe, to get into the playoffs. We played Seattle and lost, but just that culmination of seeing him come out, thought he was going to be, a generational talent as far as he was able to do that first year. But it was a lot of fun. We won a lot of games where we hadn't really won years prior. So it was a great year, and that was my last year there. So definitely left on a high note from a football standpoint.
How did you end up in Buffalo?
That was the only team that offered me after being in Oakland. So that's how I ended up there. Didn't want to go there, but I'm glad I did because it was by far the greatest experience I had on and off the field in my career.
How cold does it get up there in the winter?
Too cold.
Unbelievable. Why do you think you thrived in that system? Did they give you more of an opportunity?
Yeah. I mean, under Rex Ryan, he was known for his defensive mind. Obviously, his brother and his dad and that lineage just had an opportunity to play. I mean, a lot of guys are like me. Until you get an opportunity to go out there and showcase down in and down out, it's hard to make plays. I mean, even when you think about the top tier guys, right? They get 1,000 opportunities to rush the passer and only normally get maybe 12 to 13 sacks. I mean, somewhere in there, you got the guys that are outliers, that, end up with 20, like a Chandler Jones, or 22, those type of guys who are elite and superior. And so that was really my first opportunity to go out there and play first, second, third down and rush the passer. And I was doing that playing special teams, and that's something else most of those pass rushers don't have to endure. And I wanted to do that, so it's not like I'm complaining about it, but I'm like, to do that and play 3 special teams is hard to do. There's only one other guy that I'm aware that has done it at a high level, and that's James Harrison. And I think he might have won Defensive Player of the Year when he did it. And so that just shows you how dominant he was. But yeah, I mean, just give guys an opportunity to play. Give me an opportunity to play. I'm gonna go out there and make some plays. I mean, that's easy.
Who's the toughest quarterback you ever to sack?
Probably Ben, just because he's so big and thick. I mean, so it's hard to take him down. Once you get there, you can get to him, but he's just a big body. And those guys, you just kind of fall off of because you don't think, okay, this is a 260-pound quarterback. You're thinking, oh, this is a quarterback. Cam is probably another one too because he's big and then he's shifty and long, so he can stiff arm you. So those 2 guys, once you get there, those are the hardest tackles to get. And then obviously Lamar Jackson's probably the hardest guy just to get to touch, just because of the way he moves.
So 2016 season, you blow up. You're 12 and a half sacks. You're killing it. Did any of your former coaches call you and say like, "Yo, my bad. We should have gave you more of an opportunity"? Really?
Coaches are the most prideful dudes that you ever come across. Like, nobody's gonna say, I did have one GM though, Steve Kine, because I was in Arizona 2 years prior to that, and I signed a decent deal out of Washington. That's the reason why I left Washington to go to Arizona, and I tore my Liz Frank like the 3rd game of the season that year in 2013, and that really was. I missed all of that year. I ended up playing in 2014, but I wasn't the same guy. Got there in 2015. I got cut in 2015 because I was still dealing with a little bit of residual effects of that Liz Frank with my knee and some other stuff. But I was still getting better, and I felt like I looked different. But I got cut, went to Oakland, and ended up in Buffalo. And then after I had that 12 and a half sack season, I saw him at the combine. He said, "Oh man, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have cut you. I should have kept you." And so I will never forget that because I know how prideful guys are in the league and not willing to like let people know that they made a mistake. But Steve Keim is probably the only person that's ever said something of that nature, like, hey man, yeah, I should have kept you out, but guys get caught up in the moment. And I think a lot of coaches think they're making the best decision in the moment for their team, and so they're never going to apologize for that, or call and say, hey, we should have done XYZ.
Because the Cardinals, they got Isaiah Simmons, who really doesn't have a defined position, similar to sort of you. Do you think they're trying to recreate Lorenzo Alexander out there in the Cardinals?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, it's hard to play multiple spots. I mean, it's not as easy as people make it seem. And if you have the skill set, that's one thing. But you also have to be able to process the shifts, because each one is slightly different perspective. And he's young in his career, so I don't know if he's quite ready to do that yet, especially when you don't have the reps. So, but he has the ability to do it. But when I watch him, because I think he came from safety down.
Yeah.
That is a different skill set than coming from defensive line and moving back, right? So I had more of a natural pass rush mindset, and I had more reps there because I was a defensive lineman, to tackle defensive end, then move back. So that allows me to understand, okay, I can rush the passer on third down, how to blitz, how to time certain things up, how are offensive linemen trying to block me. I played offensive line too, so I got to sit in those meetings for a year and a half. And so I had a different, I was very unique in, not only did I have the ability to do it, but I also had a lot of the knowledge behind some of those positions and how I was being attacked. So I could use that to my advantage. And so I think he has the ability, but he's really raw when it comes to pass rush. But he can fly around like the best of them as far as sideline to sideline. And he has to continue to learn when to be athletic, because in this league you can be too aggressive and people use that against you, or you have the wrong angles, or you try to be full tilt 100% all the time, and you just do too much and put yourself out of position. So, but I say all that to say this, that he's a good player. He's just young right now, and then maybe he can develop into more of a versatile linebacker, as in our sense, as far as off the ball, coming down and rushing the pass in the traditional sense, because he blitzes very well. But I think it's gonna take time. You have to progress slowly, just because he's coming from the back end down versus starting from the defensive line and moving back.
What do you think that defense is going to do next year with J.J. Watt thrown in there?
I mean, obviously they're going to be better. They're going to be more dynamic. Now we got to see what happens on the outside, because it doesn't look like either one of their corners are coming back. So I know they have Byron Murphy that's going to probably jump in there as well to step up, but Pat P and Drake or Patrick, it won't be there as of right now, at least. So we'll see what that dynamic. Because if you can't cover on the outside, I don't care who your D line is. Obviously those guys will get there, but it won't be as dynamic as it would be if you have two solid corners on the outside, because coverage and pass rush are complementary skill sets.
And I have a question from a Washington football fan that must have followed your career. I don't know how they remember this. Do you still have the 2017 Genesis G80 sedan that you got for being Pro Bowl MVP?
Yep, and it's actually a G90. They
Oh.
allowed me to upgrade from the G80. Yeah, so I still have it.
Oh, cool.
Yep,
Cool.
I'm not giving that away. That's a storyteller right there. I can always talk about how I hit Jimmy Graham, late in the game. He got upset with me, and then the next play, my man had alligator arms, and I got a pick off my boy Kirk Cousins, and was able to pitch it and let my man go to work.
Was that Pro Bowl? Was that in Orlando or Hawaii?
That was Orlando one. Yeah.
You think they should move it back to Hawaii? Because I feel like.
I mean, I've been to both. I mean, family aspect is way better to be in Orlando because of Disney World and Universal Studios, and then it's easier to fly more people in. It's expensive over in Hawaii. So I had like 20 people, 25 people down there hanging out with us. So that was really cool.
Oh, cool. So a couple more questions for you. Who gave you the nickname One Man Gang?
Sean Springs and Fred Smoot.
What was Smoot like to play with? Because I know he is little to no filter.
Yeah, he was good. We actually sat maybe 2 or 3 lockers away. We sat in together is what he called it. So it was me, him, HB Blades, Kedrick might have been down there, and he always had some jokes, and so you had to have thick skin if you sat down in that corner because everybody was fair game, and it was always a blast, and so I really enjoyed Smoot.
So I want to talk about your foundation, the Aces Foundation. How did that come together, and what kind of stuff have you guys been doing?
Well, I started it back in 2008 with my mom and my wife, and it was really just to impact kids and give back resources. I didn't have my father traditional sense growing up, and just really being that gap filler for those communities and kids like myself, and that's how why I wanted to give back.
Has it been difficult this past year, kind of having events and stuff? Do you guys do more virtual stuff with the pandemic, or?
Yeah, it's been all virtual stuff. You can't have events, obviously. In some states, it just depends on when it opens up. So here in Arizona, we've been able to do something a little bit just because it's not as locked down and social distancing, washing the hands, the mask wearing, and utilizing all of the knowledge that we have to be in a safe environment. But yeah, it's been mostly virtual.
And then I want to ask you, so I saw you recently started with a new role. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. It's Avalon Sports Media Group, and it's really a group that is partnering with players and just trying to enhance what their vision, what their passions are in life, and how they can really and how we can really assist them in making their impact greater. So whether it's a community, whether it's in business world, whether it's on the football field, as far as me helping them understand the mental side of the game, and helping them mature as men. And young ladies to help them just maximize this short time in their life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I just got one last question for you. Was there like a defining moment in your career that kind of stands out more than anything else?
Yeah, I mean, 2007 when I actually made my first team playing the Tennessee Titans. Actually, one of my boys, Omar, he was with the Tennessee Titans playing running back, came up the middle. I was making an inside move, hit me, helmet popped off, quarterback takes off. I go take off, go to tackle the quarterback. My guy Reed Dowdy comes in, hits me, and I had like a big scar on the side of my face. But that was really like, I think the coach was like, "Ooh, this dude is for real," and that's when I made the team.
Reed Dowdy's deaf in one ear, isn't he?
Yep.
That's unbelievable. I don't know. That's unbelievable, dude. You were like, "Hey, watch out!" No,
Right.
that's wild. That's wild. And then how can people find you on social media and keep up with you in the foundation? I'll link everything to here when I post it.
Yeah, people can find me at One Man Gang 97 on Twitter, at Aces underscore Foundation on Twitter. On IG, it's the same at Aces underscore Foundation, and then Lorenzo underscore John that you can follow me at. And then yeah, you can look us up on Facebook. We're there as well.
Cool, cool,
And then my
awesome,
website is lorenzoalexander.org.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat for a few minutes today. This has been a blast.